The mission of FSU Coach is to prepare and equip the next generation of coaches and sports professionals with best practices and current research to enable them to pursue excellence. We have 2 academic programs, the online graduate certificate, which is 4 classes, and also a 10-class master's in athletic coaching. Our graduate certificate and master's program can be started at any time, either the summer, fall, or spring.
The types of classes that we offer focus on the athlete as a whole person. We focus on the theory and practice, the research, the helping skills. I came to FSU Coach because I truly believed in the mission and the purpose of the program.
I think I have my dream job being a head coach at Florida State, but I know there's always more ways that I can help my athletes and better prepare as a coach. If you're interested in going into coaching or joining the FSU Coach program, I would just say don't even think about it and do it.
Let's try that again. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to FSU Coach Live. My name is Tim Backhurst, joined today by Memphis men's tennis head coach, Chris Doerr. Chris, thanks so much for joining me. You've been on my show before, but it was a few years ago. Your life was a little different back then. Tell us where you are now, what you're doing.
I've been the head coach of the University of Memphis for the men's tennis team now this is my 3rd year, so finishing my 3rd full semester. It's been a little crazy here just because they built this brand new tennis facility. It's like a $30 million facility with the city. And so, navigating, what does that look like? I was lucky to be the assistant here for a long time before I came to Florida State. So the university side of things was very comfortable, but learning how this stuff kind of goes on in the realm of NIL, rev share, and all the new crazy stuff that's been going on, it's kept me busy. Let me put it that way.
Tell us a little bit about the transition from being an assistant coach to a head coach, because as an assistant, maybe the responsibility is not on your shoulders, but you have other duties that you might not have as a head coach. Just share what your experiences have been making that transition.
Yeah, I mean, I was very I've been very lucky in my coaching career. I worked for Coach Dwayne and then worked for Coach Paul here that were very flexible and allowing me to develop my coaching skills in different areas. And so I was really lucky to have a lot of experience in a lot of the different things. I think the adjustment is just trying to do all 11 to 12 things, 11 to 12 areas, I guess you have to do as a head coach, at one time, but also being able to trust assistant coaches and different members of staff and delegating things out that maybe aren't always done the way you would like them to be done. And so learning to trust that process, to learning to sort of how do you manage people necessarily. So I think that's been one of the biggest changes that I've definitely gone through, is managing people more, maybe non-tennis people than before, and how does that look like and how does that work. And it's been a great challenge. It's really made me uncomfortable at times, which is always a good thing, I think, because it means I'm growing in what I'm trying to do.
As an assistant coach in tennis, you were at Florida State for a number of years, and some might assume that is their dream goal, to get to college, to coach college, and maybe recoup the massive funds that you get on salary side for being an assistant coach. Tell us a little bit about that, because I don't think many people realize that outside of some of the major sports, coaches, it's not the greatest salary.
Yeah. The salaries for assistant coaches. So for men's tennis, obviously we have a head coach and assistant coach. And then if we're lucky, we have a second assistant, or just another assistant coach. I don't really know what the verbiage, like it used to be called a volunteer assistant, and now it's just basically another assistant coach. So yeah, the money's good. I mean, I'm not going to sit there and say it's bad, but it's not where people think it is. It's not what American football or basketball and maybe even baseball is making. So surviving on an assistant coach's salary, if you have a couple of kids, is not the easiest thing to do. To be honest, it's one of the biggest question marks I've had in athletics, maybe even since I've become a head coach, is why assistant coaches aren't appreciated more and why they're not maybe paid as much as they deserve to do, because they're so important to a program. I mean, it's amazing what I'm really lucky to have a fantastic assistant coach here, and he just makes the program so much better, and yet it's just underappreciated. So I'm interested to see the first school that does a good job of taking care of the assistant coaches. And one of the things that's been pretty cool to see here is we have in a one of the higher ups guys, a guy called Tim Duncan, and he did this training for assistant coaches over the summer. And I thought that was the first time that I've seen somebody really look to develop their young assistant coaches and help them. And I just thought even just something as small as that, I think it was only 2 days long, but he brought in some speakers from different schools and they got to speak, but just showing that we value assistant coaches. It just, once again, it shocks me that we in athletics don't do a better job of taking care of those guys. So yeah, it was great to come to Florida State. We loved being in Tallahassee, loved being in Florida. Like I said, a phenomenal school, phenomenal athletic school. Coburn and Alfred do an incredible job of creating this culture of winning and being successful on all levels. So that was fun to be a part of. But it was definitely an exciting opportunity to come back to Memphis as well.
Now, people on this show have talked about being a head coach is just a step towards being let go or being fired, and it is good news, Chris. At some point, do you see that a lot in tennis in the sense that it is win now, or we move on? And if we look at this season, for example, in college American football, coaches are being fired left, right, and center. Do you see that turnover in tennis?
I don't think you see it as much in tennis. I think it's I'm sure there's some people that maybe think that way, that they need to be that kind of successful. But I think for us, we're still quite a sport that's maybe focused on the right things and focused on developing athletes and developing, men off court and making sure that they're academically up to par and doing the things that they need to do. So it hasn't quite trickled over to tennis yet. We have seen, the odd guy maybe get a big contract and not do as well as we think he should do, and maybe missing the NCAA tournament has got them into a little bit of trouble of getting let go. But I think for us, it's still a self-driven motivation. I think a lot of us that become head coaches are very, motivated to be successful in the different parts of our lives, and our schools kind of dictate that a little bit. I think the turnover I've seen more in college tennis recently is just from things just changing in terms of what student athletes want out of their experience, what they're trying to get out of it, and then just a burnout of not having a recruiting calendar, not really getting a whole lot of time off, not being able to spend so much time with your kids. We don't make the money that college football coaches do. So when they get let go and get paid, $10 to $15 million, it's a very different realm to, hey, you letting go and you don't have a job to go to and making ends meet. So I think that's where I've seen a little bit of turnover, just with burnout and maybe salaries not being as high as people would like them to be.
You mentioned earlier NIL and how that has changed the landscape of college tennis or college athletics. How has it affected you in tennis? Do you have an NIL budget? Do you have to go raise support to attract better recruits? Or is tennis still very much less focused on that and more focused on, well, I'm going to coach under this, I want to be coached by this person, or I want to go live in this city, therefore I'm coming to the University of Memphis?
I think right now, honestly, we're in a very interesting time where everything you just said is correct. NIL and rev share has affected tennis. There's also some schools that don't do it at a high level. There's also a lot of schools that are, hey, we're so-and-so and we believe in what we do and we want people that want to be part of the mission and the process and not so worried about making, $10,000, maybe up to $50,000. So I think it's an interesting time where you can kind of achieve what you want to achieve as a head coach. I've been very lucky here. We've got a brand new AD, Dr. Ed Scott came from Virginia. He's done a phenomenal job of helping us all out. I think all sports have been helped out here, and has basically given us a budget, I guess. So rather than, now we've gone away from the scholarship numbers, we've got roster limits now. So it's kind of like, this is your pool of money, spend it how you want to. They've allowed me to go out and fundraise some extra money on the side that I need to. And that's one of the things that really attracted me to Memphis, is we have an incredible tennis community in this city. And I think that's kind of shown in the facility that we've built, but we have so many people that love the game here. And so knowing that we have some different country clubs in town as well, we can kind of do some different fundraising events, but it's also gives my guys an opportunity to learn how to network when they're a little bit younger, and also make some connections that can help them when they go to the real world, if they want to stay in Memphis. And I've learned that from Coach Paul. We did an incredible job of having guys that have stayed in Memphis and lived here for the last 20 to 30 years, and they've got jobs and they've had connections. And so I think there's multiple ways of looking at it than just fundraising money. I think it's making connections. And personally, I've loved getting to know a lot of successful people and learning from them. I think there's so many, successful people who have built companies that really want to help the next generation and the younger people learn what it takes and teach them what they've learned. That's just being able to get in front of them and grab lunch or grab dinner, grab coffee, grab a beer has allowed me to learn so much from them. So it's more than just money. Let me put it that way.
Mm. It is interesting, though, because a lot of times moving into a leadership position, we are not trained for the responsibilities, for example, of fundraising, and learning that process is bumpy at times. And I think there's a lesson there for those in leadership to, as you alluded to with your assistant coaches at Memphis, train these assistant coaches, these people who are coming up into the head coach positions one day, to be prepared to do this, rather than, well, I messed that one up, there goes that donor, because I said something or did something or didn't know how to ask correctly. Moving on a little bit, talk a little bit about what you've learned as a head coach in addressing some of the challenges or navigating some of the things that maybe you didn't expect or you weren't prepared for. What have you learned along the way that maybe others need to be aware
of? I think first thing, going back to what you said before, was really interesting. I did a pretty average job as an assistant coach, really getting involved in fundraising, even just coming to an event and talking to people and going and talking to administration and getting to know some higher up people and understanding how they might think and I might speak. I show up at an event and, all right, Dwayne, what do you need me to do here? Hey, you need me to go play here? Okay, great. I'll go do that. Not as opposed to now as a head coach, is like, hey, I want to meet everybody. I want to remember everybody's name. I want to know, who they are. I want to get to know what they do. I'm trying to find one thing that I can remember about them so that I can bring it up the next time we chat. So it was definitely something as a head coach, I've had to learn to do it, and more based on the fact that I didn't take advantage of the opportunities, I think, when I was an assistant coach, to do something that isn't the easiest, isn't the most fun thing to do sometimes. So I think that's part of it. I think the one thing that you alluded a little bit is like, what do we want to build here? What do we want to be a part of? What do we want to try to put in place? And how do we do that on a daily basis? That's one thing that I've had to learn how to do, and to be honest, not completely 100% sold on how to do it, and maybe that changes year to year, but I think we're always trying to find the right things we want our athletes to represent and want to be on a daily basis. Okay, and now how do I do that without changing the core things I want this team to be, but also, adjust year to year as my team changes and as my players change and as they grow in their own areas? How do I make sure I'm giving off the right vibes, the right sort of team practices that we want to do? So I don't know if that's just part of leadership and something you can never be a part of, but I've listened to different podcasts, I've read different books, I do a lot of the stuff that I think people tell you to do. It's just very different than going to day to day. All right, this is actually what I want my team and my athletes to be like. And how do I make sure I don't deviate away from that because one guy has this issue or one guy does this or one guy wants to be part of that? It's like, hey, this is what we want to do on a daily basis and a weekly basis and a monthly basis, and just be consistent with what we're trying to do. I think that's my ongoing learning challenge of right now.
I've been invited to speak at the Intercollegiate Tennis Association's conference in December, which I'm looking forward to. One of the suggestions, they asked, what do you want to talk about? My response was, well, what about the use of AI in coaching? Because I think that has become a very interesting topic to discuss. And the response I got back was, well, tennis coaches are pretty good at that. Why don't we talk about something else? I'm curious what your experiences are with adapting AI and analyzing matches, using data to inform your practices, your planning for your opponents. How much or how little do you use it, and what value does it have?
Yeah, that's interesting that they say that. I think there's a we're very lucky this year. We've hired an analytics service, and we've hired an analytics service in the past, and I think there's a lot of statistics out there. Personally, I think that if statistics are not adjusted or evaluated a little bit more behind just the number, sometimes they can be taken in the wrong context and taken in the wrong way. It's making a forehand error under pressure and making a forehand error are two different things, in my opinion. And so we have a service right now that I really like. The guy's really good. It kind of shows me the score, breaks down the point, and so I can look at how a player plays under pressure than when he doesn't play under pressure. And so maybe that's a little bit of sort of AI a little bit. I don't know. I think that it'd be very interesting to see where AI can take tennis coaching and what it can really do in terms of breaking down opponents, like you talked about, breaking down technical shots, comparing, videos side by side. And we have a couple of different programs that have tried to do that kind of thing, maybe a little bit expensive. And so that's interesting that the ITA said that we're all pretty good at that. So that makes me feel pretty good, because I don't think I do a very good job of using AI, because I look at AI and go, wow, this thing's incredible. What can't it do? How can it make my life better? And so, this semester, one mini goal for me is just trying to do it more, trying to use it more, trying to use it on a daily basis, trying to learn to trust it, trying to learn to not see it as a hindrance, but a help. So that's a good question. Where can it go? I don't think it can. I think the sky's the limit on what AI can do for us. I think there's also just a side of us as coaching very, whether we just see it or whether we know it, or understanding our players a little bit. I learn a lot from body language of my guys on a daily basis, of if they're in a good place mentally, and if they're not. I don't think it can detect that right now. So, if I'm breaking down my practice and I put it into AI and it goes, well, can it look at different body language on good days to bad days? I don't think it can see that. And so as a big part of my job is getting guys in the right frame of mind and into their zone of optimization as much as possible. That's what I don't think AI has been to yet, but it also doesn't mean it's not going to go there, or someone's probably working on that process as we speak.
Yeah, AI claims it can, by the way. I've yet to see it, but yeah. I've asked it before if it can do that, and it said yes. Okay, well, I look forward to seeing that in reality.
I think it's also just a student athlete. Sorry to cut you off, but I think it's also just, I can walk up to some of my guys and be like, you doing okay? And they'll be like, yeah, I'm fine. I'm like, well, you seem in a little bit of a bad mood. And they'll get annoyed that I've told them that they're in a bad mood. So does AI telling you, hey, you look like you're in a bad mood, annoy them even more? Or does it go, it doesn't know what it's talking about? So it's a very, and this is where I think this young generation, there's certain words that trigger certain things that they don't like. And so, we have one guy that he gets angry a little bit, and I don't think he likes the term angry. And so it's like, okay, we'll describe this word in a different way. And it becomes a very interesting conversation when you're like, okay, you don't like you don't like this word. Let's how can we word this in a better way that allows, because this is what we're seeing, but you're not feeling this. So how can we break down this word differently? And it's really, it always amazes me about how smart these young guys are these days when you ask them to break down a word that we use as a, I don't know, like a cognitive reminder of where we're going, as opposed to, all right, how are you really feeling today? And let's break down that as well. So that's where I think it's also interesting, is how much trust do we have in it at this point.
Tennis is an individual sport, but it's also a team sport. How do you balance the challenges of who you match up for doubles pairings? Who do you drop maybe down in the 6-7 spots, or the 5-6, I should say, to kind of make sure that the team is all pulling together, but knowing that within a group like that, everybody is competitive, everybody wants to be successful, and while you're my teammate, you're also my enemy to some extent.
Yeah, fantastic challenge. So really struggled with this last year a lot, honestly, to be honest. It was how do we navigate everybody competing on the right lines together in a sport that wants to be very individual. So it's a great challenge we have. One thing that we've tried to do is I do this little team competition. So I put the guys into twos, and we go and do most likely non-tennis things. So I've got a pool table out here. We've got a dartboard. I've got a par 3 course right next to us. I had them predict every match in the US Open. I had them pick who they think was going to win, college football. And my guys are international, so they have no idea who's going to win college football. But even the ones that did haven't been very successful in their guesses. I think that's kind of interesting. But it's about doing different things, and realistically it's about making them spend time together and realizing that if we learn from each other, different countries, different cultures, we can actually, I think we can learn a lot more. And so that allows us to be a little bit closer together. But it's a huge challenge. Our NCAA tournament is the individual event is in the fall now, and it actually starts today. It's probably already started there in Florida. So it's also a challenge of individually in the fall. There are some guys that are going to chase this tournament, and there's some guys that aren't. And that's one of the things I don't love about having the individual event in the fall, is that it hinders my ability to do as many team events as possible, where I can actually get the team to travel together. Because, we had one event that we took everybody to, where I'd like to have at least 2, if not 3. Mm-hmm. But that's the reality of my job. So when it comes to lineup and taking people in and out, I tell my whole team numerous times, you're going to go up and down in the lineup. You're going to be pulled out. Sometimes it's because you did something wrong. Sometimes it's not because you did something wrong. And we're trying to create a very competitive team that is always fighting for their place in the lineup. And if everybody's competing at the highest level, it does make us a better team. It can cause some issues off the court, and it can cause some problems. And but I tell the guys, it's like Formula One. I'm not sure if you're a big F1 guy, but like I love Formula One, because I think it's what college tennis is everybody gets the same thing. They get the same car. Now you got to go put it on the track. But we've also got to work together and win the Constructors' Championship, which is like the team event. But they're also always comparing themselves next to the guy that's driving the same car with the same, engineers and this kind of stuff. So it's a fantastic question with a great challenge that we deal with on a daily basis. And it's something that if you learn to really enjoy it can bring out the best in you as a coach. And you can also learn so much in that area as a year-to-year basis, in my opinion.
Favorite F1 driver?
Funnily enough, Carlos Sainz has always been a big fan of mine. I like his. I think he's got a cool story about where he's come from, where he's gone. Obviously, any English driver, I'm gonna support. So George Russell, Lando Norris, I'm always going to be a big fan of theirs. Just because of I grew up watching Michael Schumacher and was a huge fan of what he did and how dominant he was, and learned a lot about how he's done things, and his attitude and mentality I thought in life was incredible. So it was I think that's where it's. So always on the Brits, but Carlos Sainz now is at Williams. That helps me support him being an English team. So
last question: advice for other coaches or for people going into coaching. What have you learned you'd want to pass on?
The one piece of advice I would tell people is not to rush. I was really lucky to spend 7 years at the University of Memphis and then 4 years at Florida State. Most honestly, to be quite honest, my wife got into some medical schools here that kind of helped us to stay here for a long time. And then we had a baby, being close to her family, that helped. But being around for more than just 2 years, I learned. It was so much fun to watch a freshman to sophomore to junior to senior, and then how do we build a program that we want to be successful in different ways, and then, kind of going to Florida State and trying to build something with Coach Dwayne and, top 10 team in the country, #1 recruiting class. And so I think assistants leave too quickly sometimes. I think if you can spend some time, places, you learn a lot more about who you are as a coach, what you're trying to do. And then also, I think some people rush to be a head coach too quickly. So I'm 37. I spent 8 or 9 years, 12 years in college coaching before I became a head coach. And it's like, hey, I'm going to be here for the next 30 years of my life. Like, that can sound kind of scary, but that's also a really long time to be a head coach. So I think people need to be not rushing to get to the next step, because sometimes you miss out on the good things that you have. And then once they're gone, they're gone. You don't go back to being an assistant very often. So enjoy it. Assistant coaches, especially, #1, you are very appreciated. And then #2, it's okay to not get the recognition that you think you want, because even as a head coach, that stuff is recognition. I don't think any of us care about the recognition anymore, to be honest with you. We just want to do what's best for our athletes and be successful in our own ways. And success is a word that's defined in many different ways as a head coach, as opposed to just winning and losing, which I think I, as an assistant, focused a little bit too much on sometimes.
If somebody wants to reach out to you, follow up, have a question, maybe just connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
Social media is probably the easiest way. You can add me on Facebook, you can add me on Instagram. I'm pretty sure my pictures are Memphis, attired, wear shirts, or if not, maybe me and my family. But if they want to reach out with that, or they can shoot me an email, that helps as well. But yeah, and any way I can get involved or help people or answer questions would be great.
And for those listening to the podcast, it's CRDOERR@memphis.edu. Well, Chris, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate your insight. Thank you again for coming on the show. Always a pleasure to learn from you. Just a reminder, everybody, that if you're watching, be sure to subscribe, like, follow wherever you are, because we try to do these every few weeks, try to connect with somebody in sports. But for this one, on behalf of myself, Tim Baghurst, and Chris Doerr, thanks so much for watching.